Hi everyone. I hope you guys can hear me okay. Let me know if everything is working. Hello. Back in my usual setup, so now I can give feedback again. Yay. So we do have a few shots already lined up, so I'm gonna start with them. Hey Shari, so that we can get through them. Let me play this first. I haven't had time to look at any shots before, so basically I'm gonna have to give the feedback as I go, so it might take a little bit longer than usual, but the feedback should be the same. So let me play this. Oh, hang on, and I had this muted because someone was looking at it earlier. Okay.
Holy cow, this is your room? What's that smell?
Cool.
Holy cow, this is your room? What's that smell?
So I remember, Shari, you were saying that you are still splining and you were having a few problems with the weight of this, right? I'm guessing, and you also said like general notes. I think for splining, you're pretty much there. There's a few pops here and there that you can address as well.
Cow, this is your room?
But overall, I think this
What's that
is
smell?
looking pretty cool. It's looking like every week that I see it, it's getting so much better, which is a joy to watch because we can see the improvement and it's like, oh, look at her grow.
Holy cow, this is your room? What's that smell?
Cool. Let me look at something on him.
What's that smell? What's that smell?
There's something about his acting at the end. I want to talk first about like the broad things and then I'll go into the tiny details.
What's that smell? Room? What's that smell?
I wonder.
What's that smell?
I wonder, because right now what's happening for me at the end
What's that smell?
is that I feel like he's looking at her for super long time, and then he just turns around and looks somewhere else, and it's like he's not acknowledging this, and he's looking at her for a very long time. And also it feels like, yes, you're living in this pose, but it feels like it's very stuck on the pose rather than living in it. So I wonder if
What's that smell?
if the look back is maybe could be slightly more casual and more like a glance rather than a full look and staring at her. I mean, especially if you're gonna have him look away afterwards, what I would maybe do is have him smell, and like I would maybe have him like, and like we can see in his face the confusion, be like smell, and then confused and be like, what's the smell? And like maybe just it's just in smell that he looks at her like just like, oh, I'm talking to you, like the smell, and then he looks away and sniffs again. That's what I would try. That's my take again. If your mentor told you something different in the past, or there's a very big reason why you're doing this, then I would not do this note that I'm giving you. It's just that it gave me a little bit of a confusing vibe when I first saw it. But also because I feel like he doesn't even finish sniffing, that he already looks back. It also like this look back felt a little bit quick, and then he stops flat. So that's why I would, at least if you're not gonna have him all the time and just be like, what's the smell, and then look back and back at her and then back at the front again, then maybe I would do the sniff and turn on the what. So what's the smell, and then he can say the whole line there. But right now he's turning a little bit too soon and he didn't have time to finish sniffing. Yeah, honestly, it depends on whatever you want out of it. This is just my take on it, my view on it. Maybe you can quickly try it, and if it works, it works, and if not, you can keep it as you have it. But I do think that at least the sniff needs to finish and then turn on the what minimum. If not, personally, I would be like, what's that smell? And then just like he's barely acknowledging her, because right now, if not, why, like, I would be scared of this, of her looking at him with that face and with that, I don't know what it's called, hammer thingy, mallet. I would be scared. I would be worried. But he doesn't seem worried, so even if he's a little bit more on the naive side, I feel like staring for so long, you should eventually catch on what's happening. So that's my take on like the big thing that I would consider. Let me watch this again.
Holy cow, this is your room? What's that smell?
I think then you were talking about the weight of this. I think when she grabs it at the beginning, it feels really nice. But then when it drops, it feels a little bit weightless. And I feel like the reason for that is the spacing. Because look at this. Suddenly it pops. And then when it drops, it eases into this. And it stops. So if we turn ghosting, like, I feel like this would still take probably a little bit longer, because the heavier an object is, the longer it's going to take for it to start moving. Like in this case, what's moving it is partially gravity and partially her, like, rotating it with her wrist. But if it's a heavy thing, she's not going to have that much uh effect on it. It will take a little bit of time for her to have some effect. So, and gravity again, it will take some time. So I would actually change the spacing so that this, let's draw this a little bit more. This is this line. This one would actually be around there. And this one, it will take a little bit longer. And then it will come to this probably. And then once it hits her shoulder, which will be around here, then what I would do is an overshoot. Because if it's something heavy, it's not going to ease into her shoulder. It's going to overshoot and back. So it's going to do like this. And so this might even be too fast. Let me. No, I think if you just change the spacing, it would be fine. But you could potentially even add a frame to what I'm drawing here. So this one, I should have done it with another color so that it would have been easier to understand what's happening. I'm gonna draw it with this. So this one is here. Maybe this is the spacing that I would do, the one in blue. And then on this frame, this would keep on going a little bit faster, cushion in a little bit, maybe even up to there. Nah, I don't know if that would be too much. I wouldn't cushion in this one. Oh, I hate that they changed the UI. Where are we? Here. And then on this one, it would start going up. And then it would ease into this position. So if I turn this off, it would do something like this, where it keeps going a little bit and then it comes up and cushions and eases into that position, but it overshoots first. I think that's going to help. But mainly it's the spacing, just making sure that it's a little bit tighter at the top and then it gets bigger. But right now, what's happening is that you're missing this part of it being really, really tight. And what's happening also is that you're just right now easing into this last position. What I want you to do is that overshoot. I think that's going to help a lot. I hope that made sense. Because I think at the beginning when she takes it out, I think there it's feeling pretty good. It's just when it drops. And I would potentially even no, I think honestly try this first, and then if it still feels fast, then just add a few more frames at the top. Because even this might be a little bit too fast what I'm drawing. Um, you could potentially add like one more frame to this, but first try it out with just the spacing and then see if you need to change the timing. Okay, so in terms of this is more going into like polish, and I'm gonna just mark a few pops and things that I would fix because I think that overall you're ready to go into polish, and I think yeah you're ready to move on aside from my take on the end. So here, the thing that first caught my eye when I was watching this is his face, his head mostly. I'm not a big fan of how his head is rotating inwards here because it felt a bit of like a glitch, like suddenly the nose moved in and up. Like if we track the nose, you're kind of losing the curve that you were going for. And considering it's such a super quick and big move, I would prioritize arcs rather than this kind of shape that you're going for. So I would maybe, if you want him to get to this point, I would start rotating the head sooner so that nose goes in a little bit quicker. And that's going to give you this type of arc. I think I would just basically start rotating the head in. Maybe already by here it would start rotating, so around there. And then by here it would already be way further in. And I think that that's going to take care of the glitchy effect. Be careful here. The spacing is getting a little bit off. Doesn't bother me so much sometimes when I play it, but sometimes I play it and there's something that's a little bit off, and I think it's like around this area, just so that you know where I'm looking. And I think yeah, it's this, that if I track this, suddenly it pops. Like here it doesn't seem like it's moving that much, right? If we turn on ghosting, it might be easier to see. Like it barely moves. Then it pops, then it barely moves again, and then it pops again. So just fix this frame and this frame. Those two frames, just adjust it a little bit so the spacing there is a little bit better. This one, yeah. This, yeah. So definitely I would fix this here so that that knee doesn't feel weird, but maybe also put it a little bit in. But there's something here also that's bothering me. Like all around this area, there's like something weird happening from frame 62 to 72, like this 10 frames where it's kind of like the hips and the leg, it's they are making that they are moving too much in a like jittery way. So for example, um yeah, exactly. But it's not just the overshoot and back, which I agree, but it's also like the rotations are getting way too complex. So first, yeah, what Danny's saying, this should overshoot and back, and it should be cleaner in terms of the spacing up and down. Right now, it feels like it just kind of hits a wall here, and then it stays here for a little bit too long. So I would definitely do like a bit of an overshoot, and then you can get into this position. But if we track the rotations, it feels like suddenly the rotations change too much. But how do I explain it? It could be a trick of the t-shirt, honestly. Like it could be just the t-shirt that is playing with you. So just double check your curves on the RX of the hips and the main control, like the main control, the lower chest control, just because it could be that your curves are super clean. If your curves are super clean in terms of what the rotation X is doing, and they're not like doing some weird things, then it's the t-shirt that needs fixing, and that you can do with because I don't think it has controls, so you can do with blend shapes. But basically, what I would try is to avoid this change in shape to begin with, where the t-shirt goes from this type of shape to then this type of shape. And check your spacing as well, not only down but sideways, because it hits a wall here, then it moves a lot, and then it hits a wall here again, and it doesn't move, and then it pops, and then it doesn't move. So basically, your side to side, which again is not truly your side to side, it might be like your um, TEC, whichever, but basically in screen space, the side to side, it doesn't feel like it's easing in and out. It feels like it's moving and then stopping and then moving and then stopping. So there's like a bit too much going on there, which I know that part of it you probably did to make sure that the head had a nice arc, which the head does. Like the face has a really nice arc, but the hips, there's something glitchy going on that I feel needs a little bit more tweaking. And then just make sure that in that part, this leg also doesn't feel like it's glitching. And when I say glitching, it's like maybe track this part of the leg. See how here it pretty much stops. It was moving a lot, and then it stopped, and then it moves that way, and then it moves this way. Then it continues to move that way, and then it pops this way, continues to move this way. Now it's going back again. Now it stopped completely on screen. Now it moved this way. Like it's just doing this all the time. And it's a bit distracting because I can feel this type of jiggle happening. So I'm going to look first at his hips overall, and then I'm going to go through all the other body parts just so you know what I'm focusing on. I think here you can push that overshoot up a little bit more and then down because it feels almost like he just hit a wall here. Like it just stopped. And I can see that you have some overshoot because if I track this area, I can kind of see it, but it's so minimal that I would personally push it a little bit more, push that overshoot up and down a little bit more so that maybe even for a few more frames he keeps going up. Like maybe here he's still going up and then he goes down around there. And as he's coming down here and he does all of this, personally, I would try to push the hips a little bit more sideways so that his weight is already shifting to the leg that's on the ground, and then he can move this leg a little bit more freely. This movement here, it's feeling a little bit disconnected. It feels, let me think of, it feels a little bit disconnected because the legs are completely static and it feels like it's just like the hips are rotating on their own and the chest and everything is kind of rotating at the same time. So what I would do is as he's sniffing, I would push the hips up so it feels almost like he's not on his tiptoes, but like there is some foot roll happening. And I think that's going to help with the rotation of the hips feeling a little bit off because then it's not just that the hips are rotating and staying completely in place, but they're going to go up and down with the sniff. And I would try maybe to lead a little bit more with the chest because right now from here to here it feels like everything rotates at the exact same time. So maybe what I would do is here, again, I don't know how you animated this, but this curve feels maybe a little bit too pushed on the body. It feels a little bit broken. So that's maybe also what's giving it the feeling. Like here it doesn't bother me around there. Even here it works. But here it's starting to feel a little bit broken. So I would, again, I don't know how you animated this, if it was just with the root control that rotates the chest as well, or if you use the other control, either the IK hips or the lower FK control that just moves the hips. If you don't want to lose the position of the chest and everything, just either fix it with the IK or the other one that just moves the hips. But basically what I would do is I would rotate the hips a little bit less in X and potentially just bring this a little bit, like just reducing this super big line. It's just a little bit. It doesn't have to, you don't have to lose the idea of what you have. It's just reducing this very harsh angle. And I think that's also going to help with the feeling of the chest suddenly, like everything changing. But then once you do that, I would personally lead with the chest starts to come up first like maybe by a frame even, or maybe at 2 frames, and then the hips um, move after the chest, just so that it breaks it up a little bit more. And the same here, when it comes down, just choose what you want to lead with. I think I would personally, like, I would maybe lead a little bit more slightly with the hips, ever so slightly, so that the chest is the last thing to decompress. And then this part, I already mentioned what I would do. Now let me look at the legs and the feet. For basically what I would do for the feet and the legs, just to make sure that everything is going the perfect way. If you're using Animbot, that's like the easiest way. Just put um, motion trails on the knees, like on the tips and on the tip of the feet, like the toes. Particularly the toes in this area, there's a little bit of a glitch. Let me just double check. It's like around there. Yeah, it's this. So if I look at this and I do this, see how the arc, you had an arc coming here, but the spacing is also a little bit off because suddenly it slows down here and then it speeds up and then it stops. I would maybe just change this position a little bit. Potentially you could even drag this foot rather. So here we wouldn't even see the foot. And then on this one, it's actually dragging a little bit more. Then maybe in this one, it's also dragging just a little bit more. And even in this one, just a little bit. But then see how here it goes in and then it goes, basically you're doing this type of arc. I would personally like to see this maybe going out a little bit more. And then here also a little bit more, even if it feels off. Imagine that the speed with which he turns will make his legs basically rotate at the knee and come out, and that's what's going to help with the arc. But I would basically definitely just track the arcs of both feet there. And then also the knees, because there were a few knee pops aside from the one that Dan mentioned here where it feels here like the leg is stretching. You can like first fix this one, but also here it does feel like the leg is stretching and then it feels like it comes in again. Just make sure that it does a clean arc. And then here the knees also feel very jittery, especially around here. Like, I don't know if it's that noticeable, but if we see the spacing here, let me just change the color. Like here to here, it pops and then it kind of stays up and then it goes in here a little bit and then it moves in quite a bit here, but then it pops that way and then it starts moving in. So just fix it so that if you're gonna get, like, if this is going to be your final knee pose, hey you, hey you, if this is going to be your final knee pose, just make sure that you either cheat the knee in this part or something so that that spacing is nice and clean. I personally feel like this pose in particularly, the knee feels a little bit too far in. and it's starting to not get that appealing. Like this shape feels a little bit off also because it feels like the knee is rotated in. So personally, I would try to keep this type of shape of the leg. The leg feels much, much, much cleaner here. I do like the idea of the legs getting together closer, but this negative space is also not helping you. If you're going to have the legs together, which is perfectly fine and it's a very like appealing overall shape, I would just shape the legs a little bit more in so that it's a bit more graphical and there's no negative space. Because if not, it just it's a bit what's the word? Like it feels cluttered. There's too much information. So the easier you can have it, the better. So yeah, same for the other leg. Just check the spacing, especially here, for example. You go from this to this very fast and then it stops. Just tweak that spacing a little bit so this is a little bit more screen left. And the same again here, just tiny. Basically, this is more going into polish. I'm just mentioning it, even though you're still splining, just so that you're aware of it. But here, it hits a wall. But you probably were gonna do it anyway when you got into polish. It's just a double checking. Here as well, be careful. Suddenly, the leg pops like it was not doing anything. Pop. But again, if you change this, nothing that I'm saying here matters. So, whatever. And I remember, I think Madison had already mentioned the doing the hands um, and the finger animation for polishing, so I'm not gonna go over it. And I'm gonna look now at the upper body, just again, so that you know what it is that I'm gonna be focusing on. I feel like when he starts coming down here, it feels a little bit off for me. That if we track, what I like to do when I'm splining, I like to track I'm a bit of a tracking annoying person because I track even in my blocking just so that when I go into spline I cry less. But basically what I like to track are the hips, the base of the neck. So basically instead of tracking the chest control, I track the neck and then I move it with Animbot to wherever it's a visual cue. So for example, here it's a t-shirt. I would put it in the center of the t-shirt. Then I track the nose, the wrist, whatever. But here, if we track this point, there's a few things that are bothering me a little bit. And partially arcs, partially spacing. So if we turn this on, see how suddenly it pops down in this frame. And also everything pops down. So this is again something that you can address in polishing. I feel like you're more than ready to go into polishing. I don't think you need to spend another week in spline, but I can't remember if you were doing this as part of a class right now, if it's just with us. I can't remember. If it's just with us, I would say go into polishing. Like there's no need to keep it on just spline. Cool, awesome. I would say move into polish already. Like start focusing in on all of the polishy things. But I know that you said that the face was still in step, right? So first do the step, the steps. First do the face, After you do the face, then moving to polish. I would first have everything in spline, uh, just so that it's easier for you to move into polish. But here, if you see the hips and the chest move down at the exact same time, also I would just here the same thing that I mentioned about fixing this frame on the hips. The hips also should be going down a little bit more so that it doesn't feel like they pop down here. And the chest should be dragging a little bit more. So the hips lead and the chest is going to hang there for a little bit longer and then drop. So one thing drops first, the other one hangs, and then it drops. Just so that there's a little bit more of an offset with the body. Because if not, it feels like the whole body is a unit. I think you did this one with Sean Sexton. Remember his favorite type of note, the body moves as a unit. We do not want that because then Sean doesn't like us. So we want him to like us and not tell us that the body moves as a unit. So here I would keep this dragging down. And I would also keep the nice curve forward that you were having with the body. And here I would actually have the body ever so slightly rotate forward so that this would actually be was it here? What am I? Ugh, I hate this new UI. This would actually be a little bit more forward as well, and also this one will be a little bit more forward because it felt like he was having this momentum forward, like he was going this way, and instead of keeping on going this way, he hit this post and then he came down and then he kept going forward. I would just try to um, get those two movements to flow from one another a little bit more seamlessly. So all of this will be slightly more forward instead of, because right now it feels like you're doing this type of motion. I would try to soften it a little bit more. And that will fix basically, because my note will also apply to the nose. I think that's also going to fix the nose because you can see it very, very clearly in the nose. Look at how suddenly, boop, it goes down. And then it moves pretty much um, down and then sideways. Look at this. Perfect representation. It feels a little bit too mechanic. So again, I think you can fix it from the chest or basically like the hips rotation X. So I wouldn't like try to fix it from the neck or something like that because I don't think that's what's going to fix it. But basically this is where the nose would be a little bit more. I'd be careful here with his head rotation. It feels like there's a little bit too much going on in terms of his RZ on the head. I feel it's a little bit too complex because I kind of like what you're having here, but then he rotates here, stays there for a little bit longer, and then rotates again. It feels a little bit too complex. I think that here I would still have his rotation closer to what it used to be and then just go into this one. I think it's going to feel a little bit cleaner because right now there's something a little bit glitchy, and I think it's that rotation. I think that might help it, but I don't know if it's that noticeable. Um, but it feels like kind of like he stops here and then keeps going. So I would just simplify that rotation Z. And then other things to do in polish, a little bit of offset in the shoulders. Not necessarily like they can hit at different times. So like they can get 1, 2, for example. But you can also offset the in-betweens. So if they're going up and down, they can hit the extremes at the same time. But then they can slightly offset when they're going up. So one comes slightly faster than the other. And I'm just mentioning this as a polish note for the whole shot just to double check when you get into polish. And also, I feel like him looking here at her feels like an excuse not to do the face. Mm-mm-mm-mm. Sometimes you can get away with it, but here it feels a little bit obvious. So no, 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 no. I know you, Shari. You're. I'm not gonna let you get away with that. I know you. I know what country you live in. It's big, but I can find you. Also, again, in terms of in terms of the hands, like I know that Madison already mentioned the adding a little bit of animation to the hands. I would also try to get a little bit of more an appealing pose because right now it feels like the fingers are very even rather than having a little bit more of an organic feel to them. Like usually when we close our fists, I don't know if it can like, but like they kind of converge into like this point. Like all of the fingers converge around here, and so I would try to get that a little bit more, just so that it doesn't feel like they are all completely parallel. It doesn't have to be as exaggerated as I'm doing it, but just a little bit more. And then also considering he's not like with his fist really really close, some parts maybe his hand is even a little bit more open, like he can do something like this where instead of having it both hands completely closed and twinning, he would be maybe like this. He can even gesture with his hands a lot more. Um, because right now, all throughout the shot, his hands are completely in the same pose. So, for example, here, let me just play with sound so that I can get exactly where.
Holy cow, this is your room? What's that smell?
Like here, I don't know, he's like, what's the smell? He could do like a gesture. Because imagine that even if your hands are tied, if you can still move your fingers, you can still, maybe it's because you're Latina too. So like you're a Latina, you I'm pretty sure you gesture with your hands too. Yeah, and it's like, did you really think you would come to us and we would not catch all of this? But like I'm pretty sure that you as a Latina, you also speak with your hands a lot. Like for me, maybe it's also because at least Argentina has a lot of influence from Italy, but I'm pretty sure that even if my hands are tied, I would still be trying to gesture. Like I'm pretty sure that I would still use my hands to communicate, because especially if this is all the range of movement you have, you're going to use anything you can to express yourself. So, you do that. Ah, Shari, as if we didn't know each other for years. So I think those are my main notes for him. I think the rest I would address these notes and then start moving into polish. Again, do the face and then start moving into polish. Let me just quickly look at his face just to double check some things. I think his face is pretty good. I would like to see its spline though, just to check the transitions because that's when you see a lot of the things.
How? This is your room?
I think here when he's sniffing, I would scrunch up his eyebrows and everything, be like maybe at the beginning, like, and then at the top bring them uh up. So all around here, I would scrunch those eyebrows. Let's pretend I can draw lines, which apparently I can't. And then when he gets to this, that's when the eyebrows go up. Kind of like what you have here. So just copy that, paste that, copy and paste that. But yeah, definitely go then into spline just to see. Okay, let's look at her.
Holy cow, this is your room? What's that smell? Holy cow, this is your room?
Wait, I'm gonna look at the door because I know that Madison was talking about it the other day, so I just wanted to see what it is.
Holy cow, this is your room?
What was it that Madison said about the door? Because I can't remember. I just know that she mentioned it, but I wasn't really paying attention because it was very hard for me to look at things on my iPad. I feel as much as I understand, like I agree with the overshoot 100%. I don't know if I would open it that as much. I mean, no. Yes to the like. Yes, I would open it as much, but what I wouldn't do is have it go back to this position because two things. One, you're getting this weird shape with the arm. Like, I don't understand what's happening. It's like kind of a weebly wobbly arm. So I would have it, yes, open as much as it did. I think that's way better for sure. But maybe I would try to overshoot it until here, like around, maybe not that frame, like this frame. Yeah. um, just because it feels right now like it's sliding too much into this position. So I would just have it overshoot again, maybe until 49. I think 47 is, or 46 are the sweet spots. And then what that will help you with is two things. Look at how many issues we can fix. Because right now what's happening is we're losing her completely. I barely know she's there. So if that door is more open after that overshoot, it's going to force you. Why can't I draw even like a straight line? I swear I'm trying, but yeah. So what that's going to happen, make it like that's going to have her here and really stretch this arm. When she's doing this to close the door, her arm needs to be straight. No, none of this. I don't want this. I want that arm to be completely straight and I want her to be seen behind him. So we don't lose her. Because right now we're losing her completely. We barely notice her expression. Which it's like you're having a really nice expression. If we didn't see her at all, fine, whatever. But I think that it's going to look much better if this is something. Oh, thank you, someone. Oh, I'm gonna kill Daniel. Thank you for the follow, Daniel. Daniel. I'm gonna kill you with the. We need to change the audio because it sounds like Windows had a problem, and I was like, what just happened? And then I remembered that our audio for follows is that. So thank you to the person who follow. I barely saw the name very quickly at the end. Thank you very much. So yeah, I know that it sucks to do a change as big as this, but trust me, I think it's going to help you so much with how this movement reads. And again, really straight arm. So we can go for like a more graphical shape as well. Because right now what's happening with all of this is that aside from this feels a little bit broken because the hand should be actually following that wrist line a little bit more. It feels a bit weak. So we want a bit of a stronger line in that arm so that we can feel that she pushes with a bit more strength. Plus, it's going to help make this transition a little bit quicker because she's going to have to move a bigger distance, and so it's going to flow really nicely because it's going to make it quicker. Look at how many things we can improve. This is fantastic.
Oh, this is your room?
I love it.
What's that smell? Holy cow, this is your room?
Here, when she's doing this, all of this movement, personally, I would also move her hips. Like I would maybe, let me think. Like start with the arm. Like the hand is going to lead the motion, but then the hips are going to kind of help and push because this is a heavy object. And so just using her arm strength, yes, you can do it, but you can help your arm not have to use that much strength if first she starts moving, like for example around here, because I think you have it a little bit, it's just pushing it a bit more. So here she would start with her hand, and maybe around this frame 123 her hips would go up a little bit more, not a lot, just a little bit more. And then as it's coming down, first the hips come down and then I'm gonna call it hammer. I think it's a mallet, but I don't want to say it wrong, so I'm gonna call it Harley Quinn's hammer thingy. So again, just a bit more overshoot. It's not an overshoot, it's an actual, like the hips are actually moving up and down. I think also that's going to help because right now it feels like her whole body is very static while the rest is moving. So I think it's going to help it connect the rest of the movement uh, of the whole body. It's just going to flow a little bit better. Here, I feel like this is a weird position for the hand because she's kind of touching the frame. I don't know. It feels like you could potentially just make this a little bit more appealing as well if you just brought the hand here. I think it's going to make it as an overall more appealing shape, and you're not going to have this happening where it feels a little bit off of why would she keep her hands there. And it also kind of ties it in a little bit more, like all together.
Holy cow.
This works much better now. Just make sure that you also, I think I had mentioned this before, but track the wrist a little bit more. It feels, I don't know if she needs to take her hand off of him here. I think she can just keep on like I think you can just simplify all of this. There's too much information on an area that we don't need because we can add complexity in movement if the audience is going to look in that area, because then it's like, oh, what's happening there? But if the main area of the shot right now is this, adding all of that extra movement is just making it too complex for no reason. So I would just keep her still touching him here up until basically this pose. And then you just go into this. Less is more.
Holy cow, this is your... Holy cow, this is your room?
Get this. There's something here when she enters. Yeah. So when she enters, I would track her nose as well, because her arc is getting a little bit weird here at the beginning. There we go. Maybe I should zoom in, and I should have drawn this a little bit less big. So let me... Where is this? Here. So let me just draw this again. I'm so not happy with this new. So her nose is coming from like around here, which is perfect. She's going that way. But then it stops, and then it goes this way, and then it kind of almost stops in place, and then it goes down, down again, and then pops. And then it moves like here, and that's okay. So I think that around this place, I'm kind of expecting her nose to be here, like to keep moving. At the most, she could start going the other way, but it would be like the nose is around here rather than so far to the other side. Like you can even see it from like this particular one. See how here also it feels like the head stops and then it pops this way again. So just fix that spacing. I would even fix potentially this frame. I would just have the head be ever so slightly more here. So it's like when we track things, sometimes the nose might be perfect because of the head rotation, but we also have to remember to track the head so that the head itself doesn't hit walls. And then this one for sure, I would have it closer to what it was, just so that, again, remember the like bouncing ball thing should when you ease in and ease out, when you change direction, it slows in and then slows out. And then the same here. Basically, just track the spacing of this area so that it's nicer overall. I think that personally, I would look for a clean arc that does something like this. That would be my clean arc, because you kind of have the idea, but it doesn't feel as clean. I think it's because of this pop that you have, and suddenly it stops. And then the rotation, like if we look at the rotation X of the head, it literally pops in this. Like the rotation X goes down. So just make sure you go in and clean your arcs, like your arcs, so your curves in the graph editor. I think that's also going to help quite a bit. Because I do think that the problem is mostly coming from the neck and the head, because the body, like if I see the body is working. So it's just the neck and the head that need fixing in that area. Let me go back to regular view. And then same as I mentioned for Jules, I will go over the legs a little bit because there are some knee pops, but just make sure you put motion trails and just track everything. And even if you already did it, do it again. It never hurts to do it more than once. I even have things like shots that I've done in the past where I tracked everything so much to the T. And I look at them now, I'm like, oh my god, look at that knee pop. I'm like, why did I see, why didn't anyone see that knee pop? Too late now. I think the same is happening here. And the same is kind of happening here. Let me just track this. Yeah, and the same, like here, I would maybe have her coming down a little bit sooner, just because if we track this spacing, suddenly it pops down. It's like the same thing that's happening with him. So I'm guessing it could come from her, because if he's constrained to her, his movement might start here. So it's fixing this frame in particular. So having it be slightly more down, so it just flows a little bit more. And tracking her nose, because it kind of stops there, and then it's kind of doing this type of motion. It would be nicer if it were a bit more of an arc here. So maybe just arcing it down and up. And I think also here, you're starting to get into this. I think it's like your RC. I would start it a few frames sooner, because it feels weird that she's already moving that way, but her head hasn't started that rotation in C. So I would start it like maybe 2 frames earlier, so that already around here it's starting to get into that rotation a little bit sooner. Just because when I play it, it feels a little bit slightly clunky, and I like, it's a feeling that I'm getting. It's not like I'm telling you, oh, it's this. It just feels like that, and I'm pretty sure it's the RZ. So I would check that out. It's just massaging your curves in the graph editor. I remember a mentor saying that in class 1, and I was thinking, oh, that's a weird phrase, and now I'm like, no, they're actually true. Yes, this is 3D animation made by Shari. Let me reset. The same thing here about the rotation in the head. I think you can start it a little bit sooner, because if not, you get this part where it feels like it slows down. So I would have her already here getting into that RY and RZ a little bit sooner, just a few frames earlier. Hang on. No, that's okay. And then in terms of in this particular part, again, just checking your uh, legs. Sometimes it's hard to just track the knees, especially if you don't see it. So in this case, sometimes you just have to track it manually instead of with the motion trails. But particularly if we look at this edge, see how it moves a lot, and then it kind of bounces up, and then suddenly quickly comes down, and then it already starts moving this way. Like there's a lot of, and then already starts moving the other way. There's a lot of jittering movement happening. So just clean that up a little bit more. Ooh, ah, what's happening here? I'm seeing a leg doing something that it shouldn't. I'm seeing you. You can trick this literally if you if you just have him always with his legs closed around there, you can, like, you would have to first here just hide the leg all around. And yes, here you're gonna have to cheat it a little bit more. But even around here, you can, like, up to here, it's all good. We don't care about the leg. Once we see those legs kind of close together so that we don't see this, you can move that leg. So we just need to not see the leg suddenly popping into place here. Just hide it for sure in this frame. I think here when she makes this gesture, I feel like it feels a little bit spliny. And I think it's because it takes too long. I feel like the movement could be sharper and quicker because right now it feels like she's going like, "Mm." I think it could be like a little bit quicker. And I think it's also going to make it not necessarily cuter, but just a little bit, especially because this face is so good and like the way that that expression is being conveyed is really nice. So I would just sharpen this so that you get to this faster and you get out of this faster so that the whole movement lasts way less, because right now it's lasting how long? It's almost lasting like 18 frames. It's way too long. It's like almost a second, not necessarily, but almost. I would remove maybe 6 frames and see how it looks if it's faster or even more. And again, for the whole end, I would have the hand closer to her. I would not move this. Black on black, so yeah, so smart. I wouldn't move that shoulder that much, especially because she has that thing and it's heavy, but also because it's more like a like I don't know. So yes, this one would move, but if I do it, it's like I'm mostly moving this shoulder, so I would reduce this one way, way, way more. So it's barely moving, so that you're also not moving this so much. I wouldn't hide her arm so much because then it's going to come out again. So it feels a little bit like a glitch that it suddenly disappears. I would still keep her arm here, always visible. I would only hide her arm if we're not going to see it for a very long time and you need to hide it for a reason. In this case, it's going to come up anyway, so I would just not hide it. And I would accentuate the fingers opening and closing as an anticipation before the grab. Like you kind of have it a little bit, but I would do it even more like here, splayed out, open, and even here, open a little bit more, and then we see them wrap so that we can see that anticipation a little bit more. And be careful here, it kind of hits a wall. and then it stops. I would like to see her hand going higher and then lower to grab it rather than exactly in the position, because it feels too animated, too controlled. Like she makes no mistakes. And human nature, it's like impossible to grab something so perfectly, like, especially because yes, she's looking at it, but when she starts going in there, she's not looking at the place where she's going to grab it. She's looking at the top. So that hand should go up and down as she's closing. So it would go up with that anticipation open and then close down. It's not that it has to go up a lot, it's just a little bit so that it doesn't feel so perfect. And then again, check your knee pops on this area of the legs because there's a few. I don't want to tell you everything just so that you also go in and find them. This is like a polishy thing, but it would be nice is when like that thing hits, like we see maybe like there's like a little bit of compression in the chest ever so slightly coming down and up, just a little bit, and especially in that shoulder, down and up a little bit, just so that we see it connected to the body, but it's like very small polishy thing. Yeah, I think those are my main notes for now. Do you have any questions? I'm gonna check also if anyone left anything on Discord. No. And while you potentially type your questions, I know the feeling. Let me share all of our links for everyone here. The indentation on this sucks, but I hope they make sense. Yeah, I know, right? I think there are a few frames where I didn't do drawings. Um, that they're all tiny, tiny little things. I know that it feels like a lot, but it's just tiny, tiny things to keep pushing your work so that's more and more refined. But yeah, honestly, it's looking fantastic, especially from the first time that we saw it weeks ago to now. It's amazing how much you've worked on it. So well done. Very well done. So next, we have Anush. Yeah, no problem. Are you here, Anush? I think I saw you there before, so I'm guessing you are. Hey, how's it going? Cool. So I was looking at this earlier. I didn't leave any notes yet, but I said, why was that not playing correctly? Okay, what's happening? Why is it suddenly pausing? Is there something going on in that frame? Wow, I don't know what's happening. It was playing correctly before. Okay, I'm getting very frustrated. Let me just refresh. Why is it pausing on that frame? Okay, this is very frustrated. Is is it just it's just you and me in that sync sketch, so it should be okay. And it's always pausing in the exact same ones. Maybe if I open it in a new tab, because it was working well before I saw it. Fine, fine, whatever. It probably is my Wi-Fi that's being a bit of an annoying thing. Ugh. So I remember seeing this working very nicely in terms of like the playback was working, and I think it's looking much better than last time. I think it also makes a bit more sense now. I'm just gonna scrub through it. It's gonna probably be easier. There were a few areas that felt a little bit off. I think also the camera works much better now. I think let me see when the reaction would be good. This would be so much better if the playback was working. Why is it doing this? It was working so well before. I don't get it. Maybe if I let it play for a few times. Yeah, I know, right? It's so weird. Like, it's supposed to be playing. It was, like, honestly, I opened it 2 hours ago and it was playing perfectly. That's why I was like, oh, yeah, I know what notes to give. But now, every single time. Ah, yes. The joys of Sync Sketch. So I'm just gonna scrub through and we'll make the most out of um, scrubbing. I think you can still keep him in the diving pose for a few frames longer because I feel like you definitely I'm gonna give you this. You definitely applied the note. The note that I gave you of making the pool bigger. It's just that I feel that uh maybe now it's a little bit too big, too like cartoonishly big, to the point where like it's starting to get funny, but like also I was looking, I remember playing and I was like, oh wow, like yes, that is a big pool. I'm like, how would he even get out of this? Maybe you should like model like a ladder here just so that he can get, yeah, exactly. I mean, but you definitely took the note and run with it. It definitely made me laugh when I saw it first. I was like, yeah, he made it bigger for sure. I think it can be slightly smaller, but the reason for it is that um he's like, imagine you're diving from like for like diving to a pool. Usually there's a little bit more space between the beginning of the pool and the diving board. So I would maybe have the pool be up to here so that there's a little bit more of a breathing time before we see the pool. And like it's so funny how big it is. So I would definitely keep it big because it's just hilariously big and it makes no sense and it's fantastic, but it's maybe like a slightly too big. So again, maybe up to there, potentially up to here, maybe, so that we can also have him be in this position for a few more frames, like potentially. Yeah, I think the other one that I said was better. Potentially up to maybe this frame. Like again, it's just a little bit longer, not too much. I forgot where my drawing thing is. Just like a two more frames, just a little bit longer. This is so annoying because there's a timing thing that I wanted to talk about, and it's really hard to talk about it without properly seeing it. But fine, whatever. I don't think I have any other browser installed because Firefox sucks. Like I used to be a web developer, so like I know the browsers, and Firefox used to be good and then it sucked, so I deleted it from my existence. And the other one that's installed here, do I have the Chromium? No, I deleted it. Do I have, I only have Edge, and that's like worse, but maybe sometimes life is weird and websites are made for Edge, so we can try. See, I haven't even used it once. Let's hope it works. Yes, join. Ugh, come on. Please play. If it doesn't play, then it might be my computer being a bitch. Oh, yay. Thank you for the recommendation. Edge usually sucks, but for this, it's working. So we're gonna run for it with it now, even though it goes against my religion. My web developer religion hates this. Oh my god! You're joking! Why? Oh my god. I mean, I know he's older than us, but come on. Wow! For anyone who's reading, Simon is the supervisor in the film that Ayub and I are working on. So it's like, oh my god. I mean, yes, Edge works for this right now, but it's not a good browser. It's like really, really bad. Wow, Simon. I thought you were better than this. Let's just. Maybe I should close it here and see if. Nah, it's okay. I didn't draw that much. Okay, let's continue here. Actually, I would keep him diving probably until here. And then maybe for a few frames, like, because I see that you kind of have an inkling of that idea with the head rotating here, but I feel like it's so soft that we barely see it. We barely notice what's happening. So aside also from the path that I'm going to talk about later, in terms of the idea, I would keep him still diving here, even here, like potentially even here, I would still have him diving in the same pose. And then once he goes past this, let's say this is your where the pool starts, or I don't know, around here. I'm kind of now torn because I don't want you to lose how insanely big it is. Once he starts going past the pool, that he sees that he misses it, what we can do is around here, he very quickly, he's still in this pose, but his head very quickly rotates up quite a bit. And even like it might feel a little bit broken, but like our heads can rotate up quite a bit. So like make it very, very obvious that he's looking at it. And maybe for like 3 to 4 frames, he's looking at it. Again, he can start a little bit sooner than this. Like maybe around here, he starts rotating and looking up. And again, at least 4 frames, because it takes 4 frames for someone to uh, recognize something in their brains. Minimum 4 frames to like recognize and react, and then he can go into this cartoony. So actually, you know what? I'm now going back my word, because adding this thing that I'm telling you, I think you can potentially keep this height of the pool. I think that's okay. I'm going back on it. I know, I'm sorry, but I think keep it. Keep it because it's also super funny. Just make sure that maybe around this frame, like around this frame, he's still diving, but he rotates, and potentially until this frame he still has it, so that he's looking at how much he missed the pool, and then he can do the cartoony shuffle. And for the shuffle, I would try to make it a little bit faster, because right now it feels a little bit too slow. What I would do is basically try to have like the legs doing maybe 2 full circles around, maybe the arms as well, everything offset, and then we can see where we add multiples and smear frames if we need them. But just make this a little bit faster, because right now it feels like he's not really moving that much, particularly here. It doesn't feel like there's much movement. So I would try to have full two circles of the legs doing this. I have an example of this that I did. It's not a good example. It's a really bad example, but it's a little bit more going towards what I want to show you. So let me just look it up really quickly. It's in my AM profile, I think, because I don't think I saved this version because it's bad animation, but it's somewhere in the AM campus. So let me just look it up. Because I also wanted to try and do something cartoony fun. And shuffles are always fun thing to do. Where's my latest version? I think this is it. So this is my very crappy animation. Don't copy this because it's bad, but this is what I mean. Like the shuffle, making it a little, like again, this is even, it feels very slow right now. I think this was also my blocking, so that's why it also feels slow. And like the poses are crap and it's too exaggerated, but it's a little bit like there's more happening and there's a little bit more desperation in the movement. Even this is slow. I would do it even faster. So I would try to do something like that where it's a little bit more frantic movement. And then I think the beginning feels much better now. But then here, it's around this area, but I want to just do this so that it might be easier to read it. Okay. It could be a camera movement thing, but I'm pretty sure it's animation. So it's definitely around that area, but just double checking. Yeah. So around this area, all of this, it feels like the body slowed down quite a bit. Like his momentum forward slowed down a lot in this area. And if we see the spacing, it's kind of hard now to see with all of this, but let's just mark it really big here. You were coming in with a specific spacing and suddenly it went really, really tight. See how it's barely moving and then it continues moving a lot. See how the spacing here, it gets really, really tight. I would just make this spacing moving forward just even. Just constant moving forward evenly because he's already gathered a certain speed, so he's just going to keep it until he jumps. I wouldn't slow it down, so I would just basically remove frames until you get to that spacing. Because this is the only part that really caught my attention in terms of the speed of the whole thing. The rest, hey, how's it going? And then for the path that I was mentioning earlier, it kind of feels like it's no longer doing a bouncing ball type of path, because see how it does whoosh, it suddenly moved a lot to the screen right. So what I would do is, if you want him to just drop here, so if we see it, it's like around here, that's where he starts. Like the thing is that it's going to get to a point where, considering this is his starting point, like the starting point of the arc, once he gets to the same level, he's just going to keep going down. He's not going to keep moving sideways because the momentum forward is going to stop. Because this, let's say it was like this, he's just going to keep coming down pretty much straight. So what I would do if this is where he's going to be dropping straight, because if we see where all my drawings are for everything else, I would just make this arc, this first arc, bigger. So here he would actually be around this area. And this arc, he's probably going to be like around here. It's just making that arc a little bit bigger, just so that it doesn't feel like he suddenly moved sideways for no reason. Okay, yeah, check the, because that's the thing that sometimes, even if in reality it works perfectly, if to camera it's not working, we need to cheat it to camera, which sucks, but yeah, life. So just make sure that to camera it's working. I also feel like this jump, it's feeling a little bit soft, and you could potentially take frames out of this, but if you didn't want to take frames because that's also too much work, just make this go slightly higher. I think even here will fix it. It's like it's very, very minimal. It's not like it's a lot that you need to fix. I would just make him go a little bit higher. And honestly, it's just way easier than taking frames out. By the way, this is looking so much better than last time. Like I can see so much of an improvement, and I think it's way better that you focus on this rather than on the other shot that you wanted to do, because I think you're going to learn way more from this. And after this, you, it depends on what you want to do. We can talk about it next week when you show me the next version of this. Just think about what you potentially want to do, and we can talk about later in terms of if we're gonna focus more on another body mechanics shot, or maybe a pantomime would be nice. Pantomime, the thing about pantomime that's nice is that it has body mechanics in it, but it starts getting more acting. And so instead of going straight into an acting shot, you start getting like you're dipping your toes in it. And here I love the, what, this is like super funny how he goes into this. What I would do, because I think overall it's working, it's just the very, very end. Let me just go to here. Cool, sounds good. I think that like up to here, I would keep it as you have it, like up to like 135. Just make sure that the legs don't move exactly both at the same time, but that one moves before the other. Just so that right now both legs are twinning like this. Just make sure that one starts moving before the other. And after 136, this should be much faster. Like how they drop, I would remove a lot of frames. At least half of the frames, and just make sure that the spacing is, it feels more like a bouncing ball hitting the ground. So for example, here it feels like they are slowing down. Like if we track this, or even the knees particularly, but see how even the spacing is, and suddenly it goes very big, but all of around here it's very even. And even on the other one, it also feels very much, this one more feels like it's slowing down, and this one feels like it's very even and then it gets really big. So I would first remove a lot of frames and then just make sure that it's progressively getting bigger. And then you can even have it bounce a little bit, like do a little bit of a like the micro bounces on the bouncing ball, even if it's just one bounce, that's more than enough. But even this, I think that might be a little bit fast, but it could work. Let me check. Yeah, it could be fast, but I think it's gonna work. And the same with the other one, just make it faster and just make sure that they are offset all the time. I would maybe hide the hand here. It's not adding to the silhouette. I would just leave it. I wish we could have his butt be rounder. I know that it's not possible, but it's just annoying that how not round his butt is, but that's like a design flaw. So, because I think the pose is funny, so I would keep it. I think those are my main notes. Do you have any questions? Here, do have another note. I would bring this leg actually a little bit more to the front so that we see it a little bit more, because right now it feels like he has just one leg. Like I would have one leg, like like this leg, I would have it slightly more backwards and the foot pointing towards us, so that instead of the feet being straight, one of them is pointing towards us, and then the other leg would be here, just straight, just so that there's a little bit more of like an offset variation, a little bit more dynamic, just like a tiny bit. But I think that the rest feels really nice. Yeah. Do you have any questions, thoughts, complaints? I hope that this is saving properly on Sync Sketch. Or are we good? Cool. Awesome. So next we have Jacob. Are you here? If you're not here, I can still give you feedback, but just to double check. Or potentially, if you're not here, I will go to Poppy and then go to you. But I don't know. If you're here, let me know. Hey, how's it going? Awesome. So you mentioned just general notes, right? No problem. Just general notes because you're going into class 6, right? If I remember correctly.
So insensitive.
Awesome. Yeah, like even whichever notes I give you, Sean is going to always find something, because his eye, I mean, come on, he's been at DreamWorks, I don't know, since he was born, more or less. He can spot anything from a mile. Like you're like, what? He's amazing.
So insensitive. Reminds me of someone. Who does it remind me of?
To begin with, did you do just to double check? 'Cause I think you might have it, but just to double check, you did do the thing of copying the TY onto the chest and then the neck and then the head and offsetting, right? If not, I can tell you how to do it now. But that's like the main thing that he will mention for anyone's shots when they're polishing.
So insensitive.
I think you can amp it up slightly more. It's not cheating. It's polishing.
Insensitive.
I think you can amp it up slightly more on the chest, but like pixels, just a tiny bit more. So it's a little bit more squishy. but just
Reminds
this
me
is
of
tiny.
someone. Who does it remind me of? Me!
I love how this shot is looking, by the way.
So insensitive. Reminds me of someone. Who does it remind me of? Me! So
You know what I love also about this is that you already are doing a shot with body mechanics and acting. So when you get to his class, he's basically going to tell you you can do whatever you want, because that's something that a lot of people are missing when they go into class 6. Most of their acting shots are sitting down, and you already have even another shot where the character comes in and sits down. So basically he's probably going to tell you to do whatever you want, or he's going to suggest characters interacting more, or an animal and a person. Like, those are the things that he might suggest you do with your reel. I think, like, of course, like whatever he says goes, but I think that if you do a quadruped and a human, that would be really, really good, because I think that you have pretty solid animation skills, and if you can showcase that, and with an animal acting and a human, that would be great. Of course, the rig that most people use is Gorgeous George, just because it's one of the few characters that actually has an appealing face. All the others are unusable. Just make sure that you talk with other people who've used that rig if you're gonna use it, because I've heard that his neck is super tricky to animate, and a few other things are very, very tricky to animate.
So insensitive. Reminds me of someone. Who does it remind me of? Me!
So
So insensitive. Reminds me of someone. Who does it remind me of? Me!
I do have tiny suggestions and then tiny, tiny polishing notes.
So insensitive.
I still feel,
So
which is something that I felt in the past, that I think I've mentioned to you before, like she hits a wall here a bit too much. Yes, her hair still keeps moving, but it feels like her whole body hits a wall and nothing moves, and she's almost completely stuck. Let me just turn this off. I wonder, let me think what it is that could do. Because I also feel like, even like, for example, if the hand got there later, because right now it feels like everything hits here and then nothing moves. Like, yes, it feels like everything is kind of easing into the pose a little bit and just stays there, but everything hits exactly at the same time. If the hips got there first and maybe then at the end the hand, like something, so that there's doesn't feel like everything just dies in that pose, because if not it starts to feeling too pose to pose. Actually, let me hear it with the audio.
So insensitive. So insensitive. Reminds me of someone. So insensitive. Reminds me. So insensitive.
Like, even potentially you could add a tiny bit more movement to the hips around this area, like around 52 to 58, like ever so slightly more moving that way and then that way, but just tiny more pixels. But aside from that, I do think that everything stops at the same time. So I think if at least this hand gets there later, so she hits the pose with the body, but the hand, it's still here, And then as she gets into this, the hand goes here. Not so much that it's a 1, 2, but more like a 1, 2, so that it's all flowing from one into the other. So as she's getting into the pose, the hand starts moving and then gets there.
So insensitive. Reminds me of someone. So insensitive. So insensitive. Reminds me of 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 someone.
And then even potentially.
So insensitive. So insensitive. So insensitive.
I would also around here add a blink, because
So insensitive.
then that also gives you a little bit of something else that's happening in the face.
So insensitive. So insensitive. So insensitive.
Yay, someone following. Thank you. We need to change that sound or I'm gonna go insane. I don't know if people can hear the sound too, but from here it feels very weird.
Sensitive. Sensitive.
Maybe you could also have a small like eye dart and head dart. Like I'm just trying to figure out what else. Isn't it very unnerving? Like suddenly you're like, oh my god, something happened, and then you're like, oh no, okay, no, nothing happened. It was just a follower. Yay. Um, maybe like again, I'm just trying to find things that can. Yeah, me too. Like, what? Just like, am I not streaming anymore? What happened? We need like if anyone has any suggestions for sounds we could use, sounds they like that they think, oh, maybe this song, or even music for our starting soon part. If anyone has recommendations, feel free to post them on Discord. Here is our link again. Feel free to please help us find better sounds. But back to this. I'm just trying to think about what else could be happening so that it doesn't feel like she completely stops. Because there's still, like, yes, humans do this. But in animation, it feels a little bit weird when it just hits a pose and it stops there. So again, having the hand get there a little bit later is one possible thing. Another thing is maybe a blink and an eye dart, and with the eye dart, maybe the head ever so slightly rotates with it, just so that she's still alive in that pose, even though she's not doing that much.
Reminds me of someone. Sensitive. Sensitive. Reminds me of so insensitive.
Even potentially, again, this is not what you should do. This is just a thought, a bad thought, but a thought. She could be even doing something like, I don't know, let's say she has the keys and she's doing like, I don't know, like this with her thumb, like this, like thinking, or something else. Like that's a bad idea, but like think of maybe she could be doing something with that hand that doesn't distract us, but is still keeping her alive in there. Maybe she just has that and she's just rotating her hand, her wrist, something that is not distracting, but it's there. Just a little bit of something. Because I think that overall your animation is working really well. It's just fine tuning those few things.
So insensitive. So insensitive. Reminds me of someone. So insensitive. Reminds me of someone.
I think that also if you want to get into more like other polishy things that you can do, like she's doing this and like it's like that reminds me of someone. She could be doing something with her fingers, like just a little bit of a reaction, just so that her hand is not completely stuck in one pose. Something, or even like reminds me of someone, and just adding a little bit of wrist movement or a little bit of finger animation, just adding in those tiny details, I think is going to make it look really nice. Sorry about me all the time pausing for water. My body today is being like please drink water. And I'm not like Bo Pratt and die without water, so.
So insensitive. Reminds me of someone. Who does it remind me of? Me! So insensitive. Reminds me of someone. Who does it remind me of?
Definitely you need more blinks, because she barely blinks anymore.
Reminds me of someone.
So for example, when she goes from here to here, around here, I would have a blink.
Who does it remind me of?
And then
Who does it remind me of?
here, before she looks up, I would also have a blink. Mainly because she's going to change expressions. Like her expression changes from this to this. It's usually nice to change it with a blink, because it's kind of like the mind is refreshing and starting new. So it helps a lot to have a blink to also make that transition feel a little bit more smooth.
Me! Me!
Here, when she says me, considering how high she's going, I feel like it's nice that you're doing it with the head is kind of going up, but I would push it also ever so slightly from the hips, and then a little bit more from the chest, so that everything goes a little bit higher up. So right now she's doing like this, and she's just doing me, where she could be like me, a little bit more higher everything, just so that it matches the intensity of the dialogue.
So insensitive. So insensitive. Reminds me of someone.
This is kind of bothering me. I know it shouldn't, but it's like, it's not a tangent, but it feels like a tangent. So I would ever so slightly, because you can, just move the car just a little bit. It's just me being annoying, but it's just annoying me. It's just like, it's not a tangent, but it almost feels like one. And it's like,
So insensitive.
yeah, it kind of is. I understand why you're kind of doing this, but for me, it feels like the foot is completely stuck in place. I understand that probably knee pops were a thing and you tried to fix them. I would already here have it planted with just the toes up. And kind of the same for this one. But this one, it doesn't bother me as much because it's coming down, so it's like a 2-frame plant doesn't bother me, but this one is stuck and it does bother me. And also because I remember seeing one of the shots from Frozen 2 where Elsa is walking and she's doing a very slow walk, and I had a slow walk in Spirit too, and so I was looking at it to see how the animator did it, because it was flowing really nicely, and I was like, are they planting like, because humans do actually plant in more than 1 frame, but they were doing it in 1 frame too, and I was like, it is doable, and it does look like she has more weight. So even in slow walks, plant in 1 frame, like 2 with like the toes if you want, but like tends to like make the character have a little bit more weight. And if you're ever in doubt, just go back to Frozen, where she sees all Frozen 2, where she sees all the ice sculptures and she's walking, and it's like a shot kind of from, I think, from like the top sideways, and you see it and you're like, yep, okay, they're right.
Sensitive. Me!
even here, for me, this one definitely a 1 frame plant with just the toes. Unnecessary for it to be 2 frames. Like I would only keep a 2 frame plant if it's like impossible for the knee pops to work. Speaking of knee pops, I'm gonna mute this. Suddenly, boop, the knee pops back and then it pops forward. So either don't rotate it so much, and also here it feels a little bit weird suddenly from here to here it kind of pops, so I would already have it a little bit more rotated up, and maybe that's also going to help. But if not, just cheat this a little bit so that it's not as bent. And then on this one, yes, the straight line is nice, but you can have it slightly less straight so that it's still straight, but it's not so pushed back, so that you have a few more pixels for free. And then it's going to flow nicely into this, I believe. And then be careful here to here. There's also a very big knee pop from here to here. And try to remove this tiny negative space. Instead of removing, I would actually make this tiny negative space bigger so that there's a bit more negative space between the leg and the two legs, because there's no reason for a tiny negative space in that area. And here you can potentially just bring that leg, even if you have to cheat it ever so slightly to bend it, like if you have to scale it slightly, scale it, I don't care. And here be careful, because I don't know if it is, but it feels like from 245 to 247, it feels like, especially here, like the leg is stretching, because it feels like the knee is barely moving. So it's like maybe it's just a visual thing, but just double check that you're not stretching the leg and you're using this a little bit more. Yeah, I would definitely add more motion to the knee, just a little bit more, because if I don't see the face, the head, like I'm just trying to block it from my view, I don't see uh, any emotion from the body. So you need a little bit more of movement here, just a little bit, because it feels so small considering how big that dial leg is. So just a little bit more of up and down motion would be nice. And this anticipation, we can barely read it. I would actually have her finger come up and down a lot more, because yes, we understand what's happening, but it would be way nicer if that finger, even here, were already higher up and then it presses. It would read much, much, much more nicely. I'm going to talk about the face in a little bit as well. Here, I would like a little bit more benbow happening. Just a little bit more. Okay. I think those are my main notes for the body. I think everything is looking pretty nice. Maybe here, I'm not a big fan of this hand pose. It's starting to feel very much like a claw. So I would just keep it a little bit more dainty like. Like I would I wouldn't do so much overlap with the fingers because again, it's starting to feel like a claw. I would just keep it more like this and like just keep it with her fingers more, a little bit more straight. Tangent, fix, more negative space. Because it's a tangent, like tangents are not a problem if they happen over like 1 frame. 2 frames, maybe. 3 frames is like, okay, we're seeing the tangent. So this is happening for too many frames. No, we can't do that. Fix it. If you can, I would also remove this negative space. I know Aya is very meh, so you might need to do it with blend shapes. But if you can do it with maybe with the bend bows in the arm, that would be nice. Even here, like it was kind of bothering me here too, because it's starting to make her not as appealing. So if you can fix it, that would be nice. Wait, I do have a few more comments on the body. Where is it here? Like this is starting to get too complicated. So I would personally just try to have the hand out in silhouette. Maybe not as much as I'm drawing it, but just a little bit more because it's starting to get very complex right where the mouth is and the head is and everything. So all around here, I would try to maybe just even lower the hand overall so it's not as high in frame so that maybe it's like a little bit more around this area just so that it doesn't compete with the head. And then like do the exact same motions and everything that you're doing, just not close to the head. And then on this pose, I would rotate the hand so that instead of being like this with the thumb to camera, it's getting so foreshortened that we can't really read it. So I would just ever so slightly rotate the thumb down or rotate the whole hand, whatever works best, but at minimum the thumb all over, like all around this movement. I would definitely do that. And then be careful here. The body is moving up and the hand also is moving up. I would drag the hand a little bit down and then move it up just so that like the body is coming up and the hand is coming down and then up just so that it doesn't move up and down all at once. I think even around here, this other hand, like the background hand, can already start moving back a little bit sooner so that, again, we get a little bit of a clearer silhouette on this hand because it's starting to get a little bit messy. I would also avoid going so close to the face. If you can keep it a little bit lower, it's going to read much better. Usually, this is not terrible because it's not really covering part of the face so much. But if you can, we try to avoid going like in front of the face as much as possible. And now, yes, I think those are all my notes for the body. Just checking a few more things, but I think it should be fine. Yeah, I think the body so far really nice. Let me go to the face. And I need audio for this? Yeah, no problem.
So insensitive.
So for the blink, of course there's different types of blinks. Sorry. There's different types of blinks, but I feel like vanilla blinks pretty much cover most of the things we need for just regular blinks. And right now, I think that your blinks are a little bit your blinks. You have like 2 blinks in the whole shot. So like your 2 blinks. But this blink in particular, it feels like it's happening over like 1 frame coming down. So I would maybe start it 1 frame sooner so that in this frame, yes, black on black. In this frame, it's starting to go down a little bit more. And then on this frame is slightly more down. And then it closes. And then on this one, it starts to open a little bit more small. And then a little bit more, slightly smaller than what you have right now. Like this one would be way smaller. This one is a little bit smaller than what you have currently. And then you kind of use from 22 to 25 to get into this pose. So it's like easing into that pose on those frames.
So insensitive.
Actually,
So insensitive.
it's so hard when it's so zoomed in. It doesn't play really nicely.
So insensitive. So insensitive.
Actually, yeah, because I was looking, I would like kind of have the blink this go into this open, because right now it feels like you're stopping here and then going into this. I would maybe even delay the blink for like 2 frames, and then when it opens into this one. I would try it out to see how that looks. It might work. Let me look at the lip sync here. I still hear the S here. Check whatever lip sync notes that I give you, just double check them with not with Maya, because Maya not always is right. Check with if you have like Keyframe MP Pro that lets you scrub through, or whatever software you have on your computer that lets you scrub. Just double check, because sometimes SyncSketch offsets the audio. So I'm just gonna mark it here, but just double check it to see if it's correct. Like I'm here, the S here, so just double check it.
So insensitive.
I hear an S here. All around here I hear an S, and when there's an S, you need to have both teeth clenching. I hear the eh here. I hear an S here. I think, again, it could be SyncSketch that is offsetting your audio.
So insensitive.
But I'm not sure. Because I think that your shapes and everything are nice. Just double check that.
So insensitive.
Here, just make sure that the eyebrows and the upper lids are a little bit more connected, because I can see that they're moving down here, which is fantastic. But they're moving, like, for example, the first frame that they're moving, that's okay. By the second frame, they should already start affecting ever so slightly the eyelid. So I would just make sure that they are connected a little bit more. And then here, be careful because the eyebrows are basically popping into this shape over one frame. And there needs to be a little bit more nuance to that movement. And just make sure, like, this is like such a faraway shot that I don't want to give you too polishy notes on the eyebrows, because when it's far away, we don't need to add that much. But at least like make it over maybe at least 2 more frames so that there's like a little bit of an ease out, then a little bit of cushioning at the end, and track. Like just make sure that the corners move a little bit with an arc as well. The corners, the tips of the eyebrows. Yeah, I think the audio is offset here because everything's a little bit off. So just double check, but I'm not gonna mention it too much because I do think it's Sync Sketch. Here, be careful because your eyelids are kind of hitting a wall, so just cushion that in for a little bit more. And when the eyebrows are coming up here, I personally would also push them out a little bit more. Here I would also ever so slightly have this down more, and then ever so slightly more down, and then it goes to what you have. And then here is something that was bothering me a little bit. It's a little bit hard to read this shape, particularly because of how the lip is showing here. So this is something that you have to find a way to cheat with. Aya is sometimes hard, but basically it's just moving the mouth corner so that there's like a really nice negative space there, and it reads so much better. Especially also on the laugh. Here, I don't want to see any of this. None of this. And if possible, I would also shape the teeth a little bit more so that they are a little bit more appealing. Here as well, when she says me. Where is it? Where is my drawing? Here, ever so slightly shaping it. But yeah, overall, all around here, also, again, pose the teeth so that we don't see them here. Like, rotate the teeth, scale the teeth, whatever you have to do so that this is way cleaner. I know that this is like an exaggeration of how it should look, but overall something like that.
It's so insensitive. Reminds me of someone who hurts. It's so insensitive. Reminds me of someone who hurts. Remind me of me. It's so insensitive. Reminds me of someone. Who does it remind me of? Me!
Yeah, I think that's all I have for you. I'm trying to see if there's
So
anything else,
insensitive.
but
Reminds me of someone.
my
Who does
untrained
it remind me
eye can only see as far as this.
of? Me!
This looks really nice. Do you have any questions, thoughts, complaints, anything? Okay, so far, really nice. Ah, cool, awesome. I'm hoping they help. Awesome, cool. Next we have Poppy. I'm not sure if you're here. I think you are, because I see you. But it takes a while for Twitch to show. Hey, how's it going? So I think I can't remember, was it just general notes or lip sync notes that you wanted? I can't remember right now. But anyway, while you're right, I'm just gonna play it so that everyone can see and I can see as well. Cool.
My life has been full of next times. Things I always assumed I would get to eventually. Now I realize that I am running out of time to do them.
Cool. I think the
Want
lip
to
sync
spend
is
it with
reading
my
much
family.
better. Much better. I'm gonna just go over each shot just so that I can like scrutinize every single detail. And I'm gonna mute this because it's annoying me. Yeah, I don't have any notes on this one. Okay. Yeah, I think this looks good. I was something catching my eye. No, I think it works. Hey, Brandon. Yeah, I think it works. Okay, good to know. Tiny thing that I don't know how you can fix it, but I would remove the negative space here. Um, it looks weird. I'm gonna look at him first, just because he's had funny things in the past. I think he works much better now. I want to look at him with audio though, just to double
My
check.
life has been full of next times. Things I always assumed I would get to eventually. Now I realize that I am running out of time to do them. want to spend it with my family.
Yeah, I think his expression is just what you need for this. So perfect.
My life has been
Let me look at her.
My life has been full.
I think the full works much better now.
My life has been full of next times. Things I always assumed I would get.
I know, right?
Always assumed I would get to eventually. Now I realize that I am running out of time to do them. I want to spend it with my family.
Dude, yeah, the lip sync is working so much better now. I have tiny notes, but I think it's working way better. I do want to see something about the motion of her. I think it's working really nicely. It's just tiny things that I'm thinking of, but I need to check again.
Next times. Things I always assumed I would get to eventually. Now I realize that I am running out of time to do them. I want to spend it with my family. Full of next times. Things I always assumed I would get to eventually. Now I realize my life has been full of next times. Next times. Full of next times.
I still feel for when she says next times. I'm not looking at the lip sync yet in detail. I'm just looking at the head and body movement, just so that you know what I'm looking at.
Of next time.
I still feel like her movement when she says next times, it's too contained for the strength of that word, for especially for next. So I'm thinking
Full of next time. Full of next time.
like full, like she's, hang on, let me copy the movement.
Full of next.
Full of next times or next time. Something like maybe she goes down with her head a little bit, or maybe like either down or screen left, or even like a little bit of both. Just because again, it's like it feels like a little bit of a big uh word the way she's saying it. So I feel like her head overall would move a little bit more. It's just a little bit.
Of next times. Things I always assumed I would get to eventually. Now I realize that I am running out of time to do them. I want to spend it with my family.
Yeah, I think that's my main note about the movement.
My life has been full of next times. Things I always assumed I would get to eventually. Now I realize that I am running out of time to do them. I want to spend it with my family.
Yeah, I'm gonna look at the lip sync now.
My life has been.
Why is this not scrubbing? Let me refresh. By the way, if anyone has anything they want me to look at, feel free to post a link here, because I'm not estimating that I'm gonna be doing this for long, because Poppy's shot is pretty much there. So if anyone has anything they want me to look at, feel free to post.
My life has been. My life has been full. My life has been. My life has. My life. My life has been. My life has.
I wonder if this, for my life, I would just bring the corners out a little bit more. Just because it's starting to get so close that it's feeling more than ah. So I would just push it a little bit.
My life has been full of.
I would hide the teeth here. the lower teeth, you don't need them. Because you're gonna hide them anyway. So just don't show them. Like all around here, don't show them.
Has been full of.
And I would even already bring the mouth or the upper lips down a little bit more, even here and even here. So you getting into the ooh a little bit sooner, just so that you don't show the teeth for so long. And also because all around here, it feels like the lips, the upper lips and the teeth are maintaining the same relationship for a few too many frames. So just getting to that ooh shape a little bit sooner.
Next time. Things I always assumed I would get to eventually. Things I always assumed I would get to eventually. Things I always assumed I would. Assumed I would. Think I always assumed I would get to eventually. Always assumed I would get to eventually.
There's something
Assumed
here.
I would get to eventually. Now I realize things I always assumed I would get to eventually. Always assumed I would get to eventually. Assumed I would get.
I think part of it is that here we hear the eh, and the mouth is pretty closed, and like maybe you need more space between the teeth, just so that we see.
I would get.
Like all around here, I hear the eh, but the teeth are too clenched. And here again, double check with outside of Sync Sketch, but I hear the eh here, and I'm still in this shape.
Eventually.
So just double check because it feels a little bit off, but again, Sync Sketch is not being very reliable today.
To eventually.
I feel like there is something though, because when I look at it, it feels slightly.
Would get to eventually.
Like for example, here when she says eventually.
Eventually. I would get to eventually.
I wonder if you can even push the corners out ever so slightly more, like mostly from this side, just a little bit more on the E, and that's it.
Now I realize.
And here, what did I draw here? I think I drew something by mistake, but here I'm hearing the I, and I'm seeing an O shape. So you need to bring the mouth corners out more, so we get into the ah instead of the Again, you're getting too British with this lip sync. No, but it honestly is looking like these are tiny, tiny notes here and there.
Now I realize that I am.
And again, here, when you get into the realize, I feel that what's happening here. Now I realize. I feel like you can potentially have this mouth corners also a little bit more out, already getting into the next pose. But also what's happening is that if I track the mouth corners, it feels like they're just moving sideways. So just remember to add a little bit of more arc movement to those mouth corners so that they don't just move out, but there's a little bit more arc happening.
I am running out of time to
Here, tongue up for the R.
running out of time to do run.
And again, ra. Not British, it's American, so a little bit more open.
Running out of time to do them. I want to spend it with my family.
And family reads way better now.
Spend it with my family.
Yeah. Let me look at the eyes.
My life has been full of next times. My life has been full of next time.
Here when she says neck on the next times, again, same as the thing of adding a little bit more motion with the head. I would also maybe add like a tiny bit of motion, kind of like in the tips, like they're just going up a little bit, but not, I don't want like the whole eyebrow to go up and down. It's like the tips would go up and potentially ever so slightly move the rest of the eyebrow so that it doesn't feel isolated, but it's just a tiny micro eyebrow movement.
They always assumed I would get to eventually. Now I realize that I am running out of time to do them. I want to spend it with my family.
Here when she opens, I would have here way closer. And then here a little bit more closed. And then from basically 521 to 24, you cushion into this pose.
Yeah, now I realize that I am running out of time to do them.
And when she closes here on this next frame, I would lower this a lot more and keep it low for the rest. Just so that it feels like it pushed the eyelids down a little bit more.
Life has been full of next times. Things of next times. Next time. Next time. Next times.
Be careful, there's something here.
Next times.
Like, I don't know what's happening, if there's like the cheeks, but see how, like I can see it in like the texture and also like the shade, the shadows. Like it kind of feels a little bit like it's popping and then it's stopping. So just whatever animation you have there. I mean, you haven't done the face connectivity, so that might get fixed when you do it. So just make sure that you check that.
I assumed I would get to eventually. Now I realize that I am running out of time. Assumed I would get to eventually. Assumed I would get to eventually. Now I realize that I am assumed I would get to eventually. Assumed I would get to eventually. Assumed I would get to
Even here when she says get on the I would also move the jaw down a little bit more just so that we see that a little bit more.
Eventually. I would get to eventually. Eventually. Would get to eventually.
And I think also here in the eventually, the mouth feels a little bit too open, so I would close it a little bit, basically so the teeth are a little bit closer together. Because there was something that was catching my attention on this, and I think it's the eventually feels too open. Feels more like an eh than an e.
Now I realize that I am running out of time. Running out of time to do them. I want to spend it with my family. My life.
I think those are all of my notes for you. Do you have any questions? This is looking really nice. I honestly, it's very minimal what I have.
Full of
Cool.
next times. Things I always assumed I would get to eventually. Now I realize that I am running out of time to do them. I want to spend it with my family.
Awesome. So I don't know if anyone has any links that they want me to look at. Let me just double check. Do. Cool. If no one has anything that they want me to look at, let me just switch here. I'm gonna give a few minutes in case someone potentially has a link. If not, we might call it a day here and we can all go do whatever early. Just checking, nothing is burning, nothing is. No one sent anything on Discord. Cool. So, if no one has any questions about anything, can be animation, life in animation, whatever. Uh, we're gonna call it here. Tomorrow we have Madison at 1 p.m. PST, and then on Saturday I might do a stream at 1 p.m. PST. Might be a short one, just in case anyone has questions. Potentially, I could give feedback, or if I have time, I will do a demo. Feel free to go on Discord and suggest demos if you want. And if I have time, I will do them. But we don't have any Q&As prepared for now. There's some really cool ones coming up, but not this Saturday. So cool. If no one has any questions, I'm gonna let everyone go. Have a great Thursday. Yeah, no problem. Have a good one. Bye bye.